Thank you all for being here for our deep dive this month, where we'll be talking about nervous system, how to calm, regulate. This month, we've been talking about nervous system in our classes. Everyone who's dear to Lifeline and LiveWell, which those of you here are, understand the importance of all of the work that we do to help support our nervous system. When we think about our nervous system, which is the first part of us that forms in utero, certainly the first year or two of our lives, into that early development in our 0 to 7 years, so much of everything that our nervous system is going to understand is formed and happen, and then it's going to be a guide and a way we respond to people in the world for sometimes the rest of our life without work. So it's so important for us to be able to understand more about our nervous system, and for us to be able to understand, if we have young ones in our life that are developing, children or others around us, to understand more about our wiring, how we got to be where we are, how we can do things in our current life that can help move our system to a better place that can function more optimally for us. So even though so much happens in our early life that establishes our nervous system, there are things that we can do the rest of our life to really help modify some of our responses and take better care of our system so that it doesn't continue to have some of the same reactions that it's had from our earliest existence. So I think understanding our system gives us the power to know what to do about it. I often might say taking care of our bodies is sometimes as a metaphor of taking care of our car. We think about taking care of a car, we go get our oil change, we look at the tire thread, we putting gas in it all the time. We really take care of our car, and we're going to have multiple cars for our lifetime. They're not going to last forever. But our body that we're born with are going to inhabit for this lifetime. If we don't take that same type of care to have regular maintenance, understanding of it, what its quirks are, what it needs, and but it's going to have a hard time staying resilient for us for our life. So it's really important to do the practices that we talk about, whether in counseling or in body work or breath work, to understand more about how we work and what we need in order to have our most resilient life. So with that, being involved in LiveWell is the whole focus is on developing that resilience and having that optimal functioning by doing a lot of the practices that can help support. So appreciate those of you that are tuning in, and those of you maybe that come back to the library and look at this, pause. We have so many resources available for the reason that I just described. We understand our system, we work on our system, we have optimal functioning of our system. So using that as a segue into this, there's many theories used to describe how our nervous system evolves and develops. Body Keeps a Score, many of you have probably read. It's a favorite about understanding some about how trauma in early life and even later life trauma experiences affect our system and our body. Stephen Porges' work is really strong in helping us gain more understanding. So I want to lean into that a little bit with talking about polyvagal theory, which some of you maybe have heard about, particularly if you've come to some of our retreats or if you've come to Jessica's Power of Rhythm and Healing workshop or the drumming workshop. She is one of our LiveWell guides who has done her dissertation on how drumming and rhythm can help restore our nervous system. And I love attending her workshops because she breaks down the polyvagal theory to help us understand more about our hyperarousal this fight or flight reaction or shutdown reaction, or how to be in that stable ventral vagal state where it's more of a calm, all is well. And we use different rhythms and noises of instruments to help us understand more about our own system. And so when we think about that, our goal is really to be able to be in the optimal window of tolerance where we can handle life's ups and downs without either collapsing or panicking in fight or flight. So being able to cultivate practices that help us expand that window of tolerance helps us be able to ride the waves of life. If you looked at our social media post this week, there was a very nice visual about riding the waves of life. We can do that only because we expand our window of tolerance to handle the ups and downs. Because if we don't do that work, we have a very narrow window of tolerance, and life's ups and downs throw us into collapse or extreme overreaction of our nervous system with that fight, flight, panic. So we're either freezing or overreacting, and we can't manage the ups and downs. So really, in understanding this is about widening that window of tolerance through doing some of these practices that we educate each other about, so that you can feel more, I like to call it insulation of your nervous system. So when you think about a wire think about even in the electricity in our house, when you have a wire, it's wrapped around with a sheath that protects the wire. And if that gets worn away, then the wire is exposed, and that can cause different reactions that are not good, fire, whatever. So we want to wrap insulation around our wiring so that when we deal with some of the external triggers, it's not setting off all the alarms. And so the insulation is all of the yoga, movement, working through trauma, pulling out some of the splinters of the old wounds, and maybe EMDR or some of the different modalities that we do, so that your nervous system can feel safe and secure and be insulated by some of these practices that you're embodying. With that, I know even Diane Mekas has signed on and joined us tonight. Appreciate seeing you here. I know there's several of you in our community and several guides and others here. I'm going to just take a moment in case anyone wants to chime in about anything I've mentioned or anything that's brought up for you. And I'm going to grab just a sip of water here. And if nobody feels like talking, I'm going to move on into some other stuff. So just a moment if anyone wants to reflect or share about what this is bringing up for them. Yeah. Any questions? Anybody want to type anything into the chat to direct any attention to a particular piece of this, or is everybody just thumbs up, ready to keep going? So one of the most important pieces of, if we look at this through the polyvagal theory, that I want to talk about, because while we're going to talk about several practices that are really helpful tonight, one of the findings of this speaks to the importance of the social engagement system. That when we are infants, our only means of communicating is through crying, noise, throwing a fit, as if we're told they are, which is really a cry for regulation. And so our earliest system knows how to be soothed through what happens when we are in that dysregulated state in our infancy. So we need to eat, we need our diaper changed. What do we do to receive the attention that we need to resolve that discomfort that we're experiencing? And so, if any of you if you don't have children or grandchildren of your own, just being around children and understanding their needs, know that most of us, whether we've been around kids or not, know that if a baby's crying, if I've never even been around a baby in my life and I'm walking through the street and see one crying on the side of the road, first thing I'm going to do, I bet all of us would hit the buzzer and say, pick it up and start to rock and soothe and talk softly and look into its eyes. Oh my gosh, what's wrong? Let's try to soothe. And so when we soothe our nervous system, it regulates. So we can pick up a crying baby and rock and soothe and swaddle and clothe. And some of us have had fitful experiences with babies and toddlers, and we know it doesn't always work, but we're wired so that this looking into the eye, this talking softly, this cuddling, the swaddling, this nurturing can really help soothe. And that wraps some insulation around the nervous system every time that's done. And so when we think about our own experience, right or wrong, many parenting techniques have come about over the generations. And there were times where it was let the baby cry, they got to learn how to tough it out themselves. I mean, many of us have tried and experienced a number of things, but what we know is because of how that social engagement system works, we want the interaction, we want the soothing, we want the comfort from another human. And so often when we're thinking about our nervous system, we might be talking about tools and techniques to help soothe us, like EFT tapping or deep breathing or yoga, all the traditional progressive relaxation, aromatherapy, guided imagery. We think about all these tools and techniques that can help soothe. And since we talk about those a lot, I just wanted to make sure right out of the gate, we talk about the most important of that social connection where someone's present for me, gets me, sees me, hears me, soothes me, and knows that they're engaged, whether that's via the eye contact, whether that's via the skin touch of a hug, or I don't know about for y'all. For me, growing up, my mom always tickled my arm or my back. That physical touch, that eye contact, a hug. That's why a lot of times in yoga class, even we maybe practice some big hugs for ourselves. And the community of looking at each other's eyes, sharing ourselves, holding each other, those are the things that really are so beneficial for our nervous system. We are not intended to live in isolation. We are social creatures. We are connected through the social thread, and we are better able to be resilient when we are surrounded and supported by others in our tribe who get us and see us and help support us. So I say that to maybe speak to some of those really basic things we can do for each other. Because sometimes I often hear maybe someone feels like they're too much, nobody knows what to do when I'm upset. And when we really think about maybe sometimes that one of the best things we can do is hug someone and see someone. We don't have to offer major solutions to some of our problems. Sometimes that problem, whether it be with ourselves or a child or a friend, is just being present, seeing, hearing, listening, supporting, soothing, nurturing. Those are the things that our nervous system relaxes and says, so we really want to tap into those resources that help us. And that is one of the, I believe, sometimes easiest accessible that we don't always go to first because we're thinking about tools and techniques instead of engagement with another person that can soothe and support us. So I'm going to take another breath.
It
And
reminds
just,
me too of I've seen stuff before about like mirror neurons and like borrowing someone else's regulation, and that's what we do for our kids is if we can find our regulation and just be in their presence, and it like our nervous systems communicate with each other and we can borrow and share regulation with others.
yes, yes. I mean, if I'm grounded, present, stable, and other is not, they can pick that up from me and I can share that. And so when we think about that value of mindful presence, which is really what we are going for, developing through whatever practice we're doing, if I can be present and grounded and mindful and connected, I'm not just helping me, I'm helping anyone I come in contact with. Most of you have, I'll say you, Diane, been in your presence in your yoga classes and know that tapping into that grounding, connected presence that you embody changes the vibration of a whole room, changes the vibration of anyone who walks in. And that energy that we create through these practices in these rooms with these connections, whether it's a counseling session or a retreat or that energy, that just that mirroring, yes, is so well documented and experienced. So thanks for bringing that up.
My granddaughter, who will be 4 soon, has started saying to me now, Grandma, look at me. It's not good enough that I'm listening. I need to be looking at her when she's talking to me.
She's not wrong. It is. And if we think about it in our own lives, you can see yourself doing it where you're distracted. Your partner's trying to talk to you and you're looking at your phone or you're cooking or blah, blah. We don't, when we're not engaged and we're not present, we're not attuned. We're not really getting what this person's trying to convey because so much of our communication is body language and all the nuances. Like if we're not looking, we miss it. If I'm looking away and this person's got a tear welling up in their eye and I'm not looking at them, I'm going to miss it. I'm not going to know that pain is there, or that hurt is there, or that excitement is there. I mean, we have to fully be present to witness what, or if we're going to really be there for someone or someone's going to be there for us, we want them to fully be tuned into us. And those are the connections that really help create some stability and some safety and some security and the nurturing that really we are desiring. Anyone else comment? I know we had printed a few slides that we will share in the sorry, I was trying to decide if I wanted to share some on here. I feel like I described the whole window of tolerance, hypoarousal. Let me know if you want me to share any of those documents on here tonight, but we will put them in our library. So we have the nervous system topic in our library, and it'll have the last deep dive we did on this one, and then some of the just other images about nervous system work that you can tune into for reference. One of my favorite, those of you who have read Radical Compassion, I have a PowerPoint in our library about it. And she talks about how if we're above or below the window of tolerance really affects how we think, how we communicate. And so really she talks about if we're above the line. And I like to use sometimes I believe it's Porges that uses the brain as your hand symbol, where basically this is all of your thinking brain and your prefrontal cortex and all. and this is your amygdala and going down to your nervous system. And that when we're dysregulated, our amygdala hyperactivated, feeding our nervous system, he says we get offline. And when we're offline, the hand opens and all of our thinking brain goes away. And we're only in our feeling state, this brain stem, our basic reptilian brain. And we can be aware of, hey, if I'm interacting with somebody and I'm feeling so dysregulated that my thinking brain is off, the first thing I need to be aware of is what do I do to soothe the system, soothe the nervous system so I can pull my brain back on. Because when our brain goes offline, and that I believe she calls it in the Radical Compassion Olympic trance, when our brain goes offline, we can't access problem solving, our words, our thinking, we are totally in our fear-based brain, our fight, flight, free, all of the chaos of everything feels like too much, overwhelmed. You feel like life's swirling around you, panic attack, those sorts of things. Or when we're caught in a trauma or nervous system dysregulation state. And so that lets us know we need to soothe. We need to calm, we need to soothe, we need to regulate. And knowing that life, we talked about those ups and downs earlier, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be time you feel dysregulated. There's going to be times you feel like you can't think straight. And what can you do to pause, ask yourself, what do I need? How do I nurture myself in this moment to be able to fully access all of my brain, my problem solving, instead of just be hijacked by this amygdala and this nervous system response. So I really like how she describes that. She talks about doing a U-turn, that if you feel yourself going down that road of dysregulation, that you notice it, you do a U-turn. She uses the rain meditation that I must have talked about for the last 4 years. So there's plenty of our data in our library that talks about the rain meditation, but to really help recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture what's going on inside of us. So our nervous system, while it may be complex, and while we may not always understand ourselves, if we really do the work to investigate, try a lot of different things to see what tends to work for us, we can get better and better over time at coming in and out of those hijacked responses and being present more and feeling more capable of handling kind of life on life's terms, feeling more stable and regulated. And I love the title, one of the title chapters of Melody Beatty's Codependent No More, that talks about, my favorite chapter is Don't Be Blown About by Every Wind. It's like how to be on this spiritual plane where I'm okay, even if the world's falling apart around me. And I think that's our ultimate place that we get to, where even if all those fears we have, even if it's all falling down, I'm okay. I'll be mindfully present, aware, stable, and okay. So anyone have any question or comment to throw out before I maybe just take a breath? And if y'all want to talk some and me stop this recording, I will. Anything, Zakisha, you've already spoken, and I've read through some notes. Anything I didn't speak to that you think is a good point to make?
This I don't think was in the notes, but I thought about it with something that you said. I'm thinking about I think it's from Peter Levine, the idea of pendulation in the healing process. And I think that's a really helpful, I don't know, idea for somebody that's especially dealing with healing trauma and dealing with a dysregulated nervous system and what that can look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Peter Levine, because I feel like I might have referenced Porges for some of his work. And in that pendulation, it's really about going there and coming back. And I feel like that's really, any of you have done therapy with me or EMDR. I mean, sometimes people don't want to work on trauma because it can feel too flooding or overwhelming. And it's really about, let's go there a little bit and then let's come back. Let's feel what that feels like, and then let's come back to safety. And, before anyone who's on a healing journey, before you even start some of that work, you really want to establish what a sense of safety is, which that in itself can feel nearly impossible for someone who's experienced so much childhood trauma, particularly where the nervous system never felt regulated in those early years. Developing that sense of safety first can be hard, but that pendulation of going back and forth between things that are scary or things that are overwhelming and coming back to an anchor of safety can really help you get prepared to do some of the deeper dive into some of the deeper things. Think about it. I think I know what metaphor came up for everybody: getting into a pool. When it's a hot day outside, you go to get in the pool, you put your toe in, it's freezing, and you back up. I don't want to do it. You get in, infinity pool, you get in gradually a little bit at a time, and your body adjusts to the temperature and it doesn't feel as frightening. So it's like, you just jump in all at once, it's overwhelming and shocks the system. So that pendulation of going in a little bit, coming out till you get comfortable with whatever it is you're doing. For instance, let's say I've never been to a yoga class and I walk in and I feel totally uncomfortable. I know I hear our yoga instructors say all the time, maybe you just come and lie flat on a mat for the whole time. Maybe I just get comfortable in my skin in this room first. Maybe I just go and stay 5 minutes and leave if that's all I can do. But we can inch in and out of things that are uncomfortable until we get better able to really sit with the discomfort long enough to really do the powerful healing work. So I think that's part of what you were referencing in that. And if there was more that you wanted the point to make it, I realize I'm going to.
I think that's the point I was thinking. I also think about it just with if you're in a completely dysregulated state and you don't have very much access to that regulation, like allowing yourself the grace and compassion to know maybe that looks like a pendulation the other way too, like just a little bit of time doing this comforting thing and then back to normal. And it stretches your capacity to be able to, even like somebody who's always in a state of fight or flight, like the connection might not feel safe. And so doing those things little bits at a time really make a difference. And I know I struggle sometimes with wanting to hurry up and do it all. And I want it to work right now and I want it to be immediate. And unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Yes, it all takes time. Yes. And so I like to reference, and I'm not going to remember them all. Some of you may, I'll Google it when we're talking. I like to reference the 6 Ps of IFS work, which the one I was just thinking of was persistent. And IFS therapy, many of you have, if you're familiar with it, you might hear about the 8 C's that we talk about: calm, clarity, compassion, courage, connection. Ideally, if we're in our optimal state of functioning, led by our wisest self, we have these 8 C's present a lot, which are the compassion, curiosity, calm, clarity, courage, connectedness, confidence, creativity. So those are like the 8 C's that we embody when we're in our wisest, resilient self. And the 6 Ps that are necessary to have that are playfulness, patience, presence, perspective, and persistence. And I think when we're working on our nervous system, when we're working on anything, heck, if you're working on a project at your house, a lot of times, even if it's not a body project, we need those playfulness, patience, presence, perspective, and persistence, where we don't get too serious about this work, even though it's very serious. We do it with a lighthearted, curious attitude, but we really are patient and present and persistent and really work to have.
You cut out for a minute. Did that happen for everybody? Okay.
Yeah, I just got a little, your internet connection is unstable.
We're
So
back.
might have had a little Wi-Fi glitchy. So yeah, any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I was
Before
thinking
we-
about them. You started out with talking about the social connection and what the presence of somebody else, what the full presence, the compassionate presence of somebody else can do to help us calm down. And then you were talking about learning ways to soothe your own nervous system. And I see that as a parallel in that it's really having connection to yourself. Finding a way to be compassionate to yourself. And what helps me, I think about it, I don't know I don't know how comprehensible the idea is, but trying to separate your consciousness from your mind, from your thinking. It's mindfulness. It's learning how to watch, having that relationship with yourself is to be fully present to yourself, just like in a social connection. If somebody gets you, or somebody has eye contact, or someone touches you, if you're part of the community, can you step away from the terror and watch the terror and be those things for yourself? And I think that's where I think you can begin to make more progress when you become a witness to yourself. And you said too about go there and come back. Establish what a sense of safety is. Sit with the discomfort. And so that difference between being in the midst of the discomfort and being owned by it and surrounded by it and unable to tear away from it, and being able to sit to witness it and to watch it and go, oh yeah, I'm doing that again. Yeah. So that relationship to the self seems to
Yes.
me
Yes. So important. And we can develop this relationship, whether it's the therapeutic relationship or the social and whatever, helps us be able to then encode that and know, oh, I can do this for me, because I experienced this. Now I know how to do it for me. And so, yeah, I mean, Kristen F's work on self-compassion, I mean, that's what it's all about. If I can tend and befriend, and if I can treat me like I would treat that baby I'm comforting, I can regulate because I have that capacity. And we all have the capacity. We're afraid we don't. And we might not have learned it, developed it, and have it strongly, but it's there. And so through experiencing it, yes, beginning to be able to do it to self is, I agree, Diane. I mean, where that really work goes from here to here, because now it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who I lose. It doesn't matter who I have it. As long as I'm alive, I have it. And if I'm not alive, then that doesn't matter. But, when we begin to trust that we have it and we can provide it, then we have less fear about losing it
And research shows that that when we're compassionate to the self, we're more likely to change and move in directions we want to move in than when we're judgmental. When we're judge people, those who are constantly shaming and judging themselves are less likely to make the changes they want to make. And so trying to interrupt that self-judgment and that self-shaming, to observe it, see it happen, watch it as a witness, and say, oh, well, that's what I did, but I don't have to do that.
Yes. Yes. That's where it's at. And while I didn't speak to the consequences of not doing these things, I did notice a little note of, when we think about all of the ways our body is impacted by not caring for it and not soothing it, the inflammation, all of the autoimmune, our system is fighting itself in so many of those conditions. And if we are caring for ourselves and loving ourselves, it's less likely for us to fight our own body. And so often, so many conditions that people develop could really be improved by developing self love, self care, self soothing, these things that help our body not see its own self as an invader. So, our immune system response, so many things are improved by doing these practices. So, our heart rate variability or functioning and, so many ways are just improved by caring and attending to our system. So important and so about such valuable work. It's not a lot of times I think it gets people often feel selfish for caring for self. And it's like, this is not selfish work. This is preservation of your body and your soul and allows you to be the person for you and for the others that you love and are in your life. So it's the most important work we can do.
You talked about breath, and we can use the breath to modify the nervous system. I mean, we know that we can calm the nervous system. We can move from one state to a calmer state using the breath. And I also think the body is like, I do believe that anxiety, I just read recently that anxiety is really more in the body than it is in the head. And I think that for me, I don't, sometimes you can't think it out. You can't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's the end. But you can, if you can go into the body and just work with the body and feel what the body is feeling, that is a way to get into that self and to get into that compassion and that self-regulation.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I really agree with
I'm
that.
just taking a walk.
I think my mic's not working.
Sorry, Anne-Marie. Yeah, your audio is really low. I could barely hear you.
Oh.
Try now.
Okay, I'm closer, but I don't know where that audio is getting. Can you hear me now?
It's soft, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
What I was going to share is exactly what Diane is talking about, that there's, I was realizing that if you're thinking things, like she said, stepwise things, verbal things, it doesn't always get to the body where it needs to go. And it occurred to me that there's a space of a part of us, kind of the frequency that's the pre-verbal, that still doesn't need words. It can't get words. And, when I was in a state of anxiety, I felt myself go onto that level and actually then go to the expanded state of the observer from the pre-verbal. It was so simple. It was just almost like awareness, but there was nothing to say. So it was like meeting that tension where it was happening in the nervous system. The other thing I wanted to share before we end is I was at a lecture once about touch, and the frequency of touch has high significance. Like, people will find fast touch irritating or even too slow. There's an ideal frequency, a kind of a gentle stroke touch that is a soothing state. And I had one of these body brushes. And I've always thought, you had to do it very vigorously. And I decided to experiment and just do it at that frequency. I'm not even trying to do anything special, but just try the frequency. And I could feel a state change, just like if you're doing EFT, I started to kind of yawn and different. And it was just the most extraordinary thing. It was like a switch, no words, just try the 8 hertz, whatever that slow pace was, and through the sensation of touch through the skin. So I thought that's another one of my tools.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Such a good tool. And yes, I mean, when you said that about the hertz of the touch, I mean, that made me think about the hertz of the sounds. I mean, the solfeggio beats different 528 hertz, the different things, sounds we can listen to at different hertz that can help soothe our system in addition to touch. And since you were sharing about that, I'm happy for, you to share too about what we've been talking about with your optimal neurofeedback. I mean, that's, I think what excited you about that work is what it did for you and helping slow things down and expand. And if there's anything you want to share about that, you're welcome to. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just gonna see if I'm closer to a microphone or not. I'm not sure if the microphone is. I learned about the neurooptimal neurofeedback quite a few years ago and started using it for myself. And I've known trainers, like they're often therapists in the social work field. That form of neurofeedback is a bit, I wonder if it's a bit like a kind of gentle stimulation to the brain, playing with sound. Actually, really, you hear a track of music, it interrupts the music, and there's no instruction to take with it, because your nervous system is going to pick up the changes in the sound faster than you would think a thought. It's just a playing with the sound for your brain, and it seems to it seems to allow some kinds of integration or creative process of the brain function. So it's a general tool. It doesn't have a specific guarantee or prescription with it. It's non-directive. It's non-coercive. Like, it's basically offering things to the brain in sound. And yeah, that is a system that's maybe coming to Lifeline, and we'll be, even though I have to go back to Canada very soon, we'll be keeping in touch, if that's something that could be another tool.
Yes. Yes, it's always exciting to, I feel like a lot of times people will get to I've tried everything, and it's like, there's always another thing, there's always this other way in which we might get what we need to have that extra support we need that really helps pull things to a better state. And so learning about that resource certainly was wonderful to hear about while you've been here and able to share that with us. So again, there's just so many resources available to us. I think it's just always important to remind ourselves that we're never truly alone, that we're connected to each other. The more we share, the more we learn, the more we care, the more we heal, the more we grow. All of this and that community that we have here with LiveWell, and just at the community at large, of trying to help people support themselves and have their optimal well-being, is just so important to us here at Lifeline. And so glad to have all of you friends, guides, and community connected and helping us kind of strengthen the energy of all this so that it's felt more and more around. So thank you all for being here, and hope you all go and have lovely evenings. And this was fun.